All right, now we are live. Epic. So today we look at the C# interactive APIs, and then we actually share the screen. Let's find out how to do that. Here we go. So it will be helpful if you could guys give us an overview. And do you actually have some sample code? That's in the attachment? That'd be awesome. Oh, here we go. I didn't see that. Let me actually drag that guy over. That's perfect. So you just import the namespace and then it all just works. Okay. So do you want to give us a high-level overview of what that thing is, what it does?
Basically, provide APIs to evaluate snippets of code, C# code. DB will come in the future. And so for now, it's just C#. It's the center class. It's basically script. C# script is a specialized class for C#. C# script is just a static class containing some helpers that you can start with. Basically, you can evaluate an expression. All these executions are asynchronous, so everything is async. You can evaluate an expression. You can evaluate expression with an expected type, right? So if the host, and by host I mean the app that is evaluating the script, expects the script to return some specific type, one object, you can specify that. Then, if there is a compilation error, like syntax error or some error, exception, you will do diagnostics. Later on, there will be API for adding references, imports, and all that stuff. Also inspecting the scripts a little bit of reflection, like looking up a variable, and a more advanced API enables chain execution, like in REPL. Basically, the REPL is implemented on top of these APIs. It doesn't have any connection code, it just uses the APIs.
And I guess the model is completely in proc, right? The compiler is hosted inside the process, you emit inside the process.
If you need out of proc, then it's up to you to implement that.
I see.
Yeah, this is evolving. Yes, in the VS REPL, obviously, evaluates out of proc, so that it's stuck with it. It doesn't take down VS. It's up to the host to do that.
Makes sense.
Yeah, so that's the basic. So we will talk about it. Essentially, these evaluate and run APIs have a couple of parameters which are changing the behavior. Which are common ways how people would change the behavior.
Yep.
And there's more in script options, which is a physical bag of additional tweaks that you can do to the script. You can add references. You can add references to a live assembly. You can add a reference to file. Reload it.
But I think these, like, let's say I have a version of an assembly reference. Can I add it up? I can probably add any other version because you just go for the metadata reader, right? Or do you use reflection over that assembly?
No, we use metadata. So this actually, the references custom throws if the assembly cannot provide us metadata. For example, assembly builder doesn't provide us metadata. Or project and you can add imports, and imports are static classes and namespaces. You'll be able to import.
So is the concept called imports in the standards, right?
Well, VB calls it imports. C# calls it usings.
So why do we call it imports here?
Because it's a host, it's language agnostic API, so we cannot call it.
So why is it called C# script if it's language?
No, the options are options.
I see.
But we used to call it usings, but then it's kind of weird.
Usings is anyways overloaded kind of in C#.
Yeah.
Even in C# using statement. I think it was a mistake to call it usings in the first place. Anyway, so this is actually the most powerful thing we can do with script is to expose as an app some type and then parameterize the script using the public members of the type. And so that's basically how script can interact with your app without going through some backchannels.
So as a high-level thing, what I'm not quite understanding, I mean, it makes sense that you can pass in an instance of an object from the running app. That makes sense. But if you are, like, how do you bridge these two universes if you're going through your normal binary metadata reader and now you get something in via reflection? Like, how do you bridge those two?
So we never get anything via reflection. So we always get the metadata from the assembly, from the implementation assembly. And so we always compile against the implementation assemblies in runtime. And we get the metadata from the location of the assembly, basically on desktop.
I see. So the instance you're getting, you're essentially looking up the metadata and then you go via the normal pipelines. You never really use reflection to compose your own stuff. That makes sense.
In theory, we could, but that we would need to fork our symbols.
No, that makes sense. Makes sense.
Which makes it very complex. So we don't support evaluating against assemblies that are not providing metadata in metadata. You can, so there is a way how to emit an assembly in memory and then load it for us and then give us just the type of the globals and we find it there. But that's quite advanced scenario. That's not the basic stuff. You need to deal with assembly loader and stuff like that. But it is possible to do in-memory scenarios that the assembly doesn't need to be on this. But the basics, usually just for an app is loaded from some file, right? So your global type will be in that file.
Does it actually have to be called globals?
No.
Type? It doesn't.
No. It can be whatever
You just take all the fields or properties off of that?
Essentially, all the members, public members. The free identifiers that are not bound within the script and are used on top level or in function are looked up on the subject. So in here, it's a little bit advanced scenario.
Why class? Why not just one?
Well, the host wants it to, be stronger than we might in future support dynamic objects. So if the class implements iDynamic meta object provided, whatever the name is, but that doesn't work right now. It might in future. It might support that. So the next example shows a little bit advanced scenario where you want to, where you create a script, you don't run it yet, you set up the global type, then you build it, which, the build returns set of diagnostics. So this example is simplified, so you should probably check if there is an error and stuff like that. So it builds it, and then you can run it in a loop, even with different instances of the global. It has to be the same type, but it can be different instances.
So where would I get compile errors? I would get them when I call build or when I call create?
Yeah, build. So build returns diagnostics. It doesn't throw. So that
I see.
You can check in a non-throwing way and evaluate throws if you still evaluate it and there are errors.
Makes sense.
It doesn't fail obviously if they are just volumes.
Yep, makes sense.
Why build over compile? That preferred naming. I mean, a lot of other places we use compiling expressions and stuff like that.
Maybe as opposed to compile, which returns the delegate, this
Yeah.
diagnostic.
Sure.
Yeah, MS build.
Yeah, but I'm with Wes. I think we call this concept compile. The fact that it returns a different type, it's like secondary. Here, internally the same thing concept is being
Don't we already
created,
have?
just stored inside the script pieces.
the MS build doesn't necessarily compile.
Yeah.
Within the like non-scripting scenario, like when you're using, you can emit assemblies. What do you call the?
Emit.
Okay. Interesting.
No, we don't want to call it emit.
No, emit will ask where.
Yeah.
Right, but I mean, like we already had the concept of compilation close by in this namespace, right? So I'm just like wondering, should we, if there's compile and expressions, but the precedent in Microsoft code analysis would probably be the thing that I would be most concerned with.
Yeah, there is none.
All places
Because
emit take where to.
Right.
So emit is basically produced by
I see.
here.
right. So when you create outside of this API, when you create a compilation, you just do compilation create, right? And that doesn't do anything. That just returns you a bag of stuff that you can ask questions, right? And then we don't really have a compile step there,
Okay.
because you can just ask for a symbol and it compiles automatically all the stuff that needs to give you the symbol. And then you have emit, right? And emit actually is equivalent to build. That it runs all the way and it produces IL and it writes it to a given stream.
I think the conceptual model for compilation is that it's already done. You create a compilation and it is compiled, and you're just asking questions later. It's sort of implementation detail that it hasn't been done.
Are there any?
So there is no compile step. There's an emit step where you say, take that information you already have and put it here for me.
I see.
So what is build doing in this case then? Can you just omit it completely and just call evaluate?
Well, build emits it completely.
So maybe that should just be called get diagnostic.
No, it emits.
It emits the.
It emits IL.
Well, is that
Creates
observable in any ways?
Huh?
That it emits anything?
Yeah, it is observable. If you call build twice, you don't get, and the first time, well, the second one will be faster, right? Because it doesn't do anything.
If
It's not really observable.
I still don't understand. Like we call exactly the same thing compile in so many places.
We can use compile.
We can use compile.
I'm not against.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, build is in .NET used for kind of building things that otherwise are immutable. Like we use build to mean you kind of keep appending, then you say, produce, and then you get something. We call this concept building. And emit, I guess emit is also similar, but we use emit only in like
Compilation
very
context.
low level.
Yeah, I mean, Anthony just said he also prefers compile. I mean, just to play devil's advocate, we have the same concept almost identically in ADO.NET, where you basically create your statement, you call prepare, which basically has very similar semantics, where you get diagnostics, identifiers are bound, and then you just have a tight loop where you execute the same command all over again. Personally, I find prepare is a bit weird in that context, because I think, like, given that you interact with a compiler, right? I think that's a semantic model most people have. I mean, it's a scripting part of the compiler, but I think it's fair to say most people have the concept of they're interacting with a compiler. So I think compile is probably the closest match. But I don't know.
What happens if you don't call build/compile here and you just call evaluate? Does it throw an error?
Yeah.
Or does it
No,
do
it will build and then it will evaluate.
Yeah.
But why have to build it all then? Why not get
This
it
will happen.
Yeah, this seems
you
like
don't want
because
to go ahead.
Because you want to have a delegate, right?
Right, that's the only side effect of build is observable. Is getting diagnosed.
Well,
Right,
sometimes
that's why
you may
I
want
said
to you may want to do it earlier. So then,
And you might want to build on another
Yeah.
thread than you're running actions, which we do.
Like my scenario would be you have a UI where people can enter the expression. You want to validate the expression, and then you want to actually evaluate it against a specific set of objects, right?
Yeah.
And so you don't want to execute it yet. You just want to get whether it's
Right,
correct.
So that's basically the scenario. You want to execute it 10 times. You don't want to.
It's,
Yeah.
So it's almost an initialization of
Yeah.
the script
Yes.
object. All it really is. It's not.
Yeah.
Compile. The fact that it's doing compile is kind of.
but one is errors. The other one, what I was trying to say is, the compile may take a long time. If
And
the
it's
script is
blocking.
large and it's blocking, so sometimes you may want to kind of build in the background when the app starts.
Yeah,
And when the
I
user
understand
presses a
the-
button, you just execute it. And then it's fine.
There is some feeling that there is a method you can call 100 times to be sure it's building. And every time you get the same diagnostic back, nothing else. And it's sort of.
I see. You're saying that it's strange that you can call it multiple times. It is a bit.
It's a verb.
Can you? What happens if you call it second time?
It's not like ensure.
So if there were, well, you get the same diagnostics out of it.
It feels like get diagnostics on the compilation, right? Where it's
Well,
like,
it is, but the user of scripting doesn't know what diagnostic is.
So why isn't it, so what about this? Could you make it a static method and basically C# script that build returns an instance of script?
Or create and build.
Why not?
Well, because you already have instance of script. You just created it. So what,
I think it's
What?
also in name.
you would need another class. I don't want to add another class.
Why would you need another class?
Because you already, the first line creates a script.
It's going to return a script,
No,
not a
but
diagnostic.
you mentioned that the first line, instead of create, it was build. The method was called build.
How do you
But
get
it doesn't
the script
build
out?
anything. You just want to create a script. The first line doesn't do anything, it just creates a
Yeah,
script.
so what if the version that is called build would actually create and build and return you the instance?
Well,
Then you still need get diagnostics or something.
no,
Doesn't
that won't work. You need API to change stuff, you might want to API to analyze
Yeah,
it. Without building.
Because with create you can also change stuff. You create some script and then you can keep adding to it, like
That was going to be my next question, is when you call build, is it now frozen?
Well,
For that
all
particular
the
instance, then you get
classes are
yes.
immutable. All the classes are immutable, right? Except for like script, you create a script, you don't change what the script is, right? You
Yeah.
can riff something and get another script. Right?
Yeah.
It's immutable except for the delegate that points to the runtime IL that it's emitted, right? And build initializes the delegate, and since then on, it's immutable. Right?
So would it make sense to, for example, throw if you call build second time? Because it seems like people just shouldn't do it.
But then you'll have to introduce is build property.
Well, no, they already
I
have
don't
it
know
there.
what the benefit.
So somebody doesn't make a mistake and call it twice or 10
No,
times.
if I the second is no.
What?
It's
The
not a
second
mistake.
call is a no.
Oh, so you already have the information.
Yeah.
And you
It's
don't
a
actually make
lazy
second
initialize.
time.
So
It
this
is
is-
literally a no.
Yeah, this is essentially just forcing all the lazy initialization.
It is preparing.
Clicks.
Yeah, it's prepare.
Prepare for run, script about it, something like that, but, you know,
I still think there might be need for property. It's just like we have dispose, which you can call 100 times, but there is dispose where you can check, do we really have to? But that's not a problem.
yeah, rarely do we expose that.
I guess.
I don't see how it would be useful. I mean, if I want to ensure that everything is initialized, I just go build. If it's already initialized,
If I want to sort, like
it's just
build on the left and not build on the right.
I mean, we can add more API, but I don't see how
I
it
think
would
it's
be used.
fine.
Yeah.
Given that it doesn't actually build, I thought it builds second time again.
No.
If it doesn't, it's fine.
How does the build work when you stack together? When you said it's immutable, so you have a script. If I get a script and I call build, and then I mutate the script with another continuous, and I call build again, or
So you don't get the script, you just create a new script.
I know it's technically another script, but I mean, like, so are they connected in anyhow, or are they completely disconnected IL generation?
So they are connected. So basically, we can get to the API later. But you create a script, and then you can chain another script to it, another script. So you can basically create. Even you can branch, right? So you can create like tree of scripts.
Mhm.
If you call build on one of those nodes, it goes all the way up and make sure everything up is built, right?
Mhm.
And if those paths meet, then part of the other scripts are also built. But
Yeah.
So if you chain them, does the new one have a reference to the old one?
Yep, that's exactly. You can build trees. Not that many people need to build trees. The repo just builds single.
Yeah, so is the mental model that in the REPL, like each line where you enter basically just becomes a script object that just points to the previous line and so on and so forth?
Yeah.
I see. Okay. That makes sense.
Submission chain.
And,
Yep.
and whatever operations are on script, always execute everything above them first, right? So if you call run or evaluate, it runs it from top to bottom.
But once
Makes
I have
sense.
this chain, can I just call something like collapse and it gives me one that is not a chain? Or you cannot. So do you worry about performance implications of having like potentially a lot of objects?
Well, it depends what you do with it, but
if you have an interactive window open for a long time, and
Yeah,
you
exactly.
keep constantly adding one more to it.
Yep, that wasn't a problem yet. You might need to implement caches inside that.
And we have seen some problem, like, once you reach like 600, 700 submissions in an REPL window, we don't fully understand whether it's because of this
But
or
it's
it's the buffer.
No,
It may be the
This is
the
not
UI
a problem.
part, yeah.
I
Not a
would,
problem.
But
I
if
would
you declare
really-
the variable when 1,000 submissions before, you might want to still access it. Like even if you're typing for a year, but now is the time.
Yeah.
Print line that text.
So we have some optimizations in place, but anything that, if you find a problem, you can always insert some cache. It's a dictionary that summarizes
A clear
the-
script, which
Yeah.
basically.
some summarizing object. that
I think the
summarizes-
mental model is also slightly different. It's not like the end goal is not to build one assembly per se that you're building. You're trying things out. We haven't implemented the feature yet, but later on we expect to save it as a script. So whatever you've done will be saved as a text file as a script, and then you can,
That's basically the
Part of
collapse,
it,
right?
right.
So you save this script, let's say it's very long, and then you load it.
Yeah.
What do you get back? Do you get
We
a chain? or
rewrite the chain.
yeah.
You see, like, I would, that's not how I would design. Or at least I would think whether you really have an option in the future to collapse it.
But
And you
don't,
can't
is
collapse
that,
it.
is that
It changes the
an
semantics.
implementation detail or an API design question? Because it seems like,
Yeah,
it
that's a
seems like you say
misapplication.
like, you just have this API, say, take the script and add this other thing to it.
So
How it's represented.
Just to be clear, the chaining is important for language semantics. If you do var x equals 1, and in the next submission you do var x equals 1.5, then you have now two x's, not one. The second one hides the first one. But if there is a function that accesses the first one, right, then it still uses the first one. Right? So you cannot collapse it in single submission. Right? You cannot type var x equals 1, var x equals 1.5. Right? So that's not a valid position.
Well, I mean, I think there's a difference between how you represent it in memory and like what the semantics are. I mean, you could have a single object that does the hiding based on line number or something, right? I think Crystal's concern is mostly about how many objects you create in memory and how
Yeah.
expensive that is versus what the semantics are. But I would agree with Nick. At the end of the day, like it's not an API question per se. It's more like how you represent it. I mean, it would be probably fairly easy. I'm hand waving here, but you could imagine there are ways where you have a collapse method. You keep the semantics and you do some other fancy way to get the semantics.
The API reflects the semantics, right? So
Yeah,
the chain,
that's fair.
You can ask the fifth script, what variables are defined now, right? And you don't see the ones that are defined later,
Yes.
right? So you can inspect it in random order, right? So the chain is really, the semantics is in the chain, right? Whether or not we choose to create some summaries inside,
Yeah.
and also the execution of the last one is faster, that's an implementation detail. And we already kind of do something like that,
Mm-hmm.
right? But where we found it might be useful.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
We haven't found.
So,
Yeah.
it's up to you, but I'm not sure how you can create a summary because you will still have to keep the objects because they reference each other. You have references internally, and I assume you don't have APIs to break the chain.
No,
Okay, well then
You-
collapsing doesn't do anything because it just creates yet another larger object and the old ones are still there.
and so you have thousands of small objects.
And what?
I can have millions of small objects.
Okay.
Most of the scenarios may not matter.
Yeah, if you don't care about perf, then yeah, I guess it doesn't matter.
I wouldn't go quite that
I
far,
don't
but
know if it's like
If you don't work it or if you have just objects.
It's not meant to be a full replacement of the C# compiler and actually.
it's
C#
explicitly.
code.
I don't know, those are the last famous words.
But
And then you talk to the base team and they have an app that is 16 gigabytes working set.
The robots are typing.
And I'm pretty sure somebody in Bing will use this API.
No, it's all right. Yeah, welcome to it.
So you did hit at something else that's interesting to me, which is like a C# script is not valid C# code. So you can't run it through a compiler.
No, I didn't say that. I said that if you were to collapse the code snippets into one code snippet, it might not be valid.
Right? Oh, I thought it sounded like you could have var x equals 1, var x equals 2, two
No.
lines behind each other in a
Right,
script
that
file.
wouldn't
That
be
would not be,
valid.
that wouldn't be a valid C#
Right.
No,
Not a valid
it is
script
not
either.
valid script either.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So-
As
They
a
have to be
as a single
separate
unit.
submissions.
Yeah, you-
Different
like you can-
submissions, you can read it.
I see, from the different.
Yeah.
So, but then I'm confused. So if you now take a chain where you have that, and you now say save as file, does it mean that the first line is omitted?
So the file will have it's not a script. It's just it's different format, right? So it's
Oh,
not a
it's-
script. It's just
I see.
history or
Serialized chain.
Yes.
serialized
So-
script.
So I should think of it more like as a JSON file or whatever, and then the script file is basically a single submission in that
So
sense.
we don't expect people to submit like C# written text file to this thing then? Well, 4x equals 1, 4x equals 2, like just writing one line at a time.
Oh, it doesn't need to be one line. It's just you can define only
Yeah.
one thing that is called X within that submission. Right?
Yeah.
So you can redefine it or not redefine it, but hide it by another definition later.
No, I guess what I'm asking is like, you won't need to create a CS file that has a main method and proper scoping and stuff and put code in there to make it work.
No.
You just write one line at a time, just like
Right.
you're doing interactive. So
Yeah.
that would never really compile as C# code, most likely, as that's with the C# compiler directly.
I still not. I mean,
Usually CSI is an extension of C#.
Yeah.
There is a CSI.exe where you can pass in a script file, a .csx file, and
Okay.
it will build it and then it will run it.
It allows
I didn't realize there was a separate option in CSC for that.
yeah, and
okay.
so scripts.
It's different.
If you want to write a script file, then that's a lightweight C# basically. You can use couple of statements, you can use couple of methods, etc. Right? And the entire script file, it can be followed as a single submission. Right? So by executing script file, you're creating one script and executing it right away. You are not changing it.
So what's sorry, maybe I missed the beginning of the conversation. Who's the customer for these APIs? What are they for? Are they for like just REPL loops? Is that the scenario?
The main scenario is evaluating snippets, C# code at runtime. Right? Whatever you want to do with that, right? You can write an app and have some scripting capabilities like VS macros or stuff like that, right? You can just open a file and run it, right? If you like PowerShell scripts, and you can just execute files that you have on disk.
But you just said that this is not the main. Like
No,
before the discussion that you had with Wes, you said that that's not what API is for. It's not for opening files. That's
No, it's
and-
I misunderstood, I guess, what the question was, but it's for evaluating strings, right? You can get the string from a file, you can get a string from input from the user, you can get a string wherever you want, right?
But then if it's like I open a file, I would like to just basically say C# script that execute and pass the large file, not keep building it chain by chain.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
No,
that,
no,
that-
Like, why do I need those thousands of objects if I just
No, you
open a
no,
file?
that the whole chaining mechanism and everything like creating is for a different kind of a scenario.
Yeah.
It's like you're building a REPL, and
So
but
if I
you-
just open a massive file, I don't get it.
You can just
I
yes,
get
correct.
one
Yes.
object.
Yes.
All of this chaining is like
Okay.
submission after submission after
Okay,
submission
okay,
when you're
okay.
doing it in a REPL window.
Yes.
You can instead say csi.exe my large script.csx, and it will be just one thing.
I'm
Yes.
now,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
fine. Yeah.
But scripting is interactive.
Okay,
Scripting doesn't need to be interactive.
okay.
All right.
You will still get million of objects because our syntax trees are
Because of what?
objects.
Why
If you have a huge
Yeah,
file of the-
That's just a syntax
Not
tree.
the script object, no need to like Roslyn object.
Ros-
Because
yeah.
Roslyn will compile
You
it.
will parse it, create a syntax tree, statements, all of that stuff. right?
but they're garbage after I'm done, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
technically they don't stick around.
So actually, good point, we can look at the creating delegate. So if you are really concerned about memory pressure, right, of some script or something like that, exactly the scenario, right? So you create a script, imagine X times Y would be a huge file, that you wrote from some big data blob or whatever, right? Then, but you don't want to run it right away, right? And you can create a delegate. And the delegate actually doesn't hold on the assets of the compilation, on the syntax trees of the compilation. It doesn't. It just has the runtime IL, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the delegate. The script runner is a delegate type. And then you can run it a million times as you wish.
So,
and GC can call it the script.
so the type of the delegate is script runner already?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why do you use a custom delegate and not something like
Funk.
actionable?
Oh, funk would be.
I don't know. Is it better to use?
We should try to use the same,
Yes.
they use the same.
The reason I think it's better is because we have that pattern already, and the problem is you can't assign across delegates unless you do some explicit casting, right? Most people don't realize they
So
can.
is that why the net framework has custom delegates already?
No, I think to me the biggest value of a custom delegate is like if you look at Brosnan where you have like func of syntax node, comma bool, where you have no fucking idea what those means, then you add value for that. If you have like specific exceptions that you throw, it's also good to have a type because you can document it. As soon as you have a very generic thing where, well, we don't know what it means because you gave it to us, I think you're better off using func because you don't actually have any value by having a custom delegate. Like, how would you
Also,
document the types?
Majority of the custom delegation framework are because we didn't have generics.
But I agree
Yeah.
with the main point is like if you have multiple parameters, each one naming them, documenting them,
Yeah.
describing contextually what they are. This is like, but it's just a thing that produces a value. Like we don't then we have.
Oh, it takes.
like,
But it's
takes
not
no-
a single value.
Exactly.
No, but the point is
That's why I'm saying
you
okay,
can't
yeah.
document them, right? Because
That's
from
what
your
I'm
point of
saying,
view, it's
func is
T1,
okay,
T2,
but
T3, so you're not better off with using that over
That's fine.
func.
I'm not.
Right.
No matter what.
Yeah.
Right.
Sounds good.
For the inspection methods needed. So you can
Interesting.
look at.
Actually, can we go back to the run for a second? Is that actually returning a task, a delegate too? Because are they all waitable in this case? You have a wait runner
Yeah.
there, so
Yeah,
that,
it's a task of it. Yes.
so the return type is always task. Is there ever a case where you would want it to just be synchronous without going through async?
You can.
No, it's
You
all
can just go to the result.
resolved.
Oh, that's
So
actually a good point, but
func
maybe
of
script,
task.
yeah, maybe in that case, script runner is better because now even very simplistic things have these super composed things of like, func of task of in, right? Like, is that actually better or is that worse? I would say at that
that's not-
point,
It's not that task, it's just.
No, it's
No.
returning task.
It
yeah,
is
it's func of task of in.
That's why I just have
Yeah,
that.
it's just.
It would be
So when-
func of object of task. A func of object, comma task.
Oh.
All right, so it
Yeah.
gets better.
I
Yeah.
see. It takes that's.
Well, we
Well, it's
can.
a T, not an object.
Maybe we can represent it when we actually.
Yeah, I think that may actually
I'll vote for script.
Yeah.
Object to task event, but.
maybe at that point.
But we should consider whether or not we need a version of this that isn't avoidable, it doesn't return task. Is there?
Well, you can always close over it and call
You
result.
sure could, but I mean, you can also add an API. Most crate delegates don't return you a task-based API in the framework, so that's why I'm wondering about.
Well, so the reason why we didn't introduce synchronous APIs anywhere here, where we have asynchronous, is that we don't want two ways of doing it.
Yeah, it makes sense. Because you don't know about the user types, right, up front. And you don't want to have a mode where you can say, oh, no, you're allowed to use await. No, you're not allowed to use await, right? That's kind of shitty for scripts.
Why is globals the type of globals passed in as an argument instead of a type argument?
I mean, whatever.
Yeah, the second printed line on the screen right now. It's globals type colon type.
Because you're reading the metadata to figure out what parameters that are going to get passed.
Right. In theory, it could be like create would be generic of globals, but then this is an optional parameter, so you would need like.
Okay.
Although on generic type, like have a create out of int and create of int, comma t globals. Right?
Yeah.
So it gets complicated and it's like not very worth it because. So the difference between that generic parameter and that type is that the script knows and all the APIs that return task know what the return type is. So it's threaded through. The type of the globals it's just needed when you pass it in again. So yes, we could thread it through again, or then everything would be of two generic parameters.
But isn't there some value then, like if script runner was also parameterized over globals, then you couldn't pass in just any object? I assume it'll
Yeah,
throw or something.
that would be value. The problem is that since it's optional, you would need like multiple votes of the same thing, like overload it on generic parameters.
Yeah.
It gets ugly, and it's not in. It cannot be easily inferred.
I'm curious, it's awaitable. Are there any yields inside? I mean,
Are there
any yields? I mean, is it computationally bound or it may yield? Because if it's just compiling and running, then there is no point in asynchronous.
No, the script itself can contain awaits. You can do evaluate quotes await.
So if script itself has awaits, it will yield to the caller. That's good. Otherwise, like sometimes people around something which just purely computes.
No, it's a good question.
It makes no sense. It buys you nothing.
Yeah, it's a good question. The point is that scripts can themselves call asynchronous.
If the scripts themselves did not, there's nothing in the infrastructure that causes that yields, is there? And that, do we yield when we're doing compilation on the background or something?
No, the compilation is cancelable, so all these cancellation token are applicable, but it's not async.
How do you pass it into the script itself? Is there an implicit global call cancellation?
So how we pass in cancellation token?
I understand that.
Well, right now we don't, but we can. We can expose it. The host can expose it on the global object.
Well, I mean that's not a terrible mode.
Yeah, the customer also asked for it.
Yeah, and it's totally like you control what the host object is or the global type is.
Yeah.
We can put a cancellation token and then we can do it. We don't do that for our global objects right now. We can.
Yeah.
We can.
Yes, that makes sense.
We didn't.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Where was it? So there's a property variables. It gives you access to a list of variables, and each variable has a name, value, type. It's doing basic reflection.
And variables is not what the host passed in. Variables is what the script declared.
Correct. So those are top level script variables.
You're calling it state here, is that really script? Because everywhere else calling it script.
No. So
It's actually
there is a difference between the previous example where you create a script
and run it.
and it runs it and gives you back the state where the script is at the end of the execution. Right? State has the result. It has the values of the variables and other.
If you have the script itself, can you get the list of variables as well from the parent?
If you have the script itself.
Script bucket?
No, because the variable. Well, you can get to the compilation and then use Rosin APIs, but the variables wouldn't have value, right? So we would need different APIs for that. This is meant to inspect the values of the variables.
Yeah, that's the.
Does variables include globals? It doesn't, right? It's just what's actually declared in script bodies.
It's what's declared in the top level as fields.
Right, but it doesn't include the globals that you passed.
Right, it doesn't. It doesn't make sense for the host to reflect over its own variables. If they want to, they can use reflection. It only contains the variables defined by the script.
Makes sense.
And you can even change the value because it just updates the field appropriate.
Is there a special name for the return variable? So like if I run async, but then I want to know what I would have gotten if I were just evaluating it.
Yeah, there is a return type.
Yeah, there is a state.result. I think it is called.
Yeah, I see.
Result something.
So it doesn't show up in variables.
No.
Yeah.
How do you get
Is type a reflection type or a Rosin type?
it's a reflection. Yeah, these are pure reflected APIs.
So
You can still analyze the compilation and get the symbols for everything. And you have get compilation on script, and there you don't need the state, right? You can analyze. You can create a script, analyze it without running.
That's cool.
That's the difference.
What is the type of state, the state variable?
C# state, script state.
Script state of T.
Where
this case.
T is whatever.
In this case.
I see. It's the return type essentially, right? Yeah, that makes sense.
The variables in the specific order, declaration
Yes,
order.
they are exactly in the declaration order.
So
There can
if
be
you're hiding, for
multiple
example, you'll
variables.
get them in
Yes.
declaration order.
So that's basically
No, but that's what I was asking.
The multi
Order.
what I mean is, what you pass in, you pass as a public stuff on the type, but what you get back is.
No, this doesn't include what you pass in. This
Yeah.
only includes what the script defines. That's if you look at the next example, it returns X and Y.
So it doesn't include the set of introducible things.
No, the host,
Should know that.
should know what.
It could capture the last thing or something.
And so this is the chaining. So you can. This is not executing the script. The first line isn't. Right? So you're just creating the chain. Okay? And then you can evaluate the entire chain. That's what we talked about.
Yeah.
And you can create a tree and evaluate branches.
Sure.
So why do you call this method continue? It seems that the phrase is taken by tasks.
And I used it because it's what it isn't doing. So how would you call it?
I would call it append.
It's not really happening. I mean, it's chaining it. I mean, you can call it chain it.
And when you add a new link to a chain, you're not appending a link to a chain.
No, like if you have a string builder, you are creating one thing, right?
You are appending to the chain, but in this context, because the things you're appending, like you're passing a string, right? And so it feels like you're appending a string to the result, but conceptually it's a new entry, right? If you appended it to the same source,
It's different
then
than
you're not
string
allowed
builder.
that hiding, right? If that second variable int y equals 2, if that was int x equals 2, then appending the text and appending a new link to the chain are very different.
Well, I think
they
you're
just-
making the argument that append implies mutation, which I would disagree with because that's what we have in the framework. But we had this discussion with immutable, right? Like, should we call the method add because add implies mutation in many
No,
cases?
it's not the-
And we decided
that's
not to do
mutation.
that.
It's just, there's two kinds of appending going on, right? You're appending a string and you're
Mhm.
appending a link to the chain. And if you just use the word append, it's not clear which one of those it is.
Well, it's both conceptually, right? I mean, I
No,
think
no, it's not. If you append the two strings together into a single entry, semantics are different. So there's two
That's what we
submissions.
talked about. If you smoosh them together.
So if you call it append submission, I think that would be fine. I'm just worried that if you call it append and you pass a string to append, to me, that means like that's the same as string builder append. It means something like that.
that's fair.
Conceptually, this is the same as continuing the task. The very same thing. You have first task, x equals 1. Then you have next task, y equals 2. Then you have next task, x plus y. Those are separate work
You
items.
chain them and you can fork them.
And it's the very same thing. If you have tasks, you can chain them, then you can execute them all.
Yeah, you could make the case and say, like, from a task standpoint, like you're basically saying run this and then run this and then run this, and that's the same thing here, right? So
Well, except it implies that it's being run. That's my problem.
What do you mean?
It doesn't imply that.
No, it doesn't.
I don't know why it applies.
It implies that a link is getting created, like with each.
When it
Maybe.
happens, the
Yeah.
next thing will happen as well.
There's something weird about it, but I don't feel super strong. So.
Could be weird.
Could be what?
Could be just weird.
Weird.
Whatever. That's just something.
What do you call the parameter for create? The string, is it called expression or
Code.
script or code?
Code.
I was just gonna try to figure out.
stuff.
Pen code or pen script is what I was trying to come up with. Continue.
Yeah, the script is the whole.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, add script wouldn't be terrible. I mean, but I think I'm fine with continue with. I mean, I don't have a lot of problems.
This does run the code, right?
Not until you
No,
get to
until
the
you
evaluate.
to the evaluate
Yep.
is.
It's deferred,
This-
technically, right?
Creating this chain.
Oh, sorry, I was looking at the next one.
Oh yeah, the next one is.
Oh,
The
and
next
that
one
can-
is equivalent, except for it's running it as you go. Right? So the first one is just creating the links, and the second one is it runs it as it's.
Yeah, that's where you get a state instead of a script back.
But execution order is exactly the same, right? Because
Yeah.
it's just different ways to express the same thing.
So a REPL would actually do the second one, right? So
Yeah.
It runs the first one, then gets the next.
Yep.
runs the next. Yeah, and there is the return value, which is
So in the REPL, like I guess my mental model is when you enter a line, it doesn't reevaluate the previous line because it still has it in memory, correct? So you
Yeah.
only evaluate the
yeah, that's the
every
state.
single.
It's maintaining the state.
That's
It's
exactly
updating.
Yeah.
Yeah, the first one is mostly like there are not many scenarios that you would use it. You could use it where you have like some initialization, right, and then use a specified script, right? So you just chain two things, right? You do create my initialization stuff, and you continue with whatever the user supply, and then you want to run the entire thing.
Yeah.
Right? It's not like I don't see a scenario where you would like chain 50 things and then you run all second.
Yeah.
The second is more powerful because you can use the side effects of the previous one.
Yes.
Yeah, this is the REPL. The second
Write the file, continue with read that same file.
I like it.
That should work either way, right? Because
The
the script happens.
Yeah, but it also guarantees that the previous one finished before the second.
if you wait for it. Yeah.
But isn't that what continuous means in the first case too? It means do the first thing, wait until it's done, then continue.
If the second one does.
But I think the first one does that as well. It just
Yeah.
Evaluates
I
later.
mean,
No, what I mean is
think
like
that
the first one computes the next piece, it puts it into the file. And the next continue with I read that file and actually append it to the script.
oh, I see.
You
Sure.
can do such crazy thing.
Yes.
First one
I guess you
doesn't
could use it
need
for
to-
self-modifying scripts.
Yeah, that's what I will do.
Okay.
That thing will contain continuous inside it.
when you get into the more advanced scenarios where you want to analyze a script without even running it. Right? So you create one and you get browsing compilation and then you can do whatever you can.
So that compilation only represents that script, right?
Yeah.
How do you like within the compilation? What's the reference to the previous variables? Like how?
Right, so
These are all
there's a script compilation info which contains this special stuff about scripts. So compilation is a general
Yeah.
structure, right? It can represent regular compilation or script compilation. And if it's script compilation, there's extra info, and part of that info is pointed to the previous compilation.
I
So it's a chain of compilations.
Makes sense.
If you get the diagnostics from that compilation, is that the same as the diagnostic bag or whatever diagnostic list you get from build?
No, it's not the same because both includes emit diagnostics.
Okay, so if you get the emit diagnostics from the compilation, they are the same.
And if you it's actually pretty complex implementation. You need to train all of them.
But there's no extra script diagnostics that aren't encapsulated in. Okay.
It's all just merging all the stuff that we already have.
So our favorite topic, assembly loading. Like what is the interactive loader?
So yes,
Pops up a dialog.
that's implementing
Browse
implementing
file
loader that you
dialog
guys
box.
should have implemented in the first place. No, this thing is. So we have internally we have implementation for Coursera and for desktop.
Mm-hmm.
And on desktop it hooks up assembly resolve, right? And the script as it's after it's compiled, it registers dependencies that are known to the script
Mm-hmm.
to the loader, so that when the types actually load, the loader can find them,
Mm-hmm.
right? So for example, and there are like directives you can do pound R
Yes.
to get the reference, right, to file. So if you pound R an assembly in some directory,
Mm-hmm.
you want its dependencies that are in the same directory
Yep.
to be resolved as well, right?
Yes.
So the loader is taking care of that. Right? It's tracking all the dependencies and it's hooking up the assembly result. That's why it's disposable to unhook the event.
Yep. But the idea is essentially that it's an abstract type and I can customize the way it's being resolved.
Right now, the customization is only, it has optional parameter, which is a shadow copy provider, which you can actually pass it to the object that makes a copy into temp before it actually loads the assembly. So you use that in the REPL when you found R something in your solution, Right? If you loaded it right from your bin directory, you couldn't do it anymore. It's locked. So we make a copy and load it from the cache. So yeah, you can customize it somewhat. We have more ways how to customize it that are currently internal. We might make them public.
Yeah, given our like previous pain points with assembly loading and policy, I would encourage you to have a very, very simple, basic abstract type, and whatever policy you think you need today, just apply it on top, because sometimes you may regret not having that base type that is very dumb.
Yep.
Because that's what we have all the time.
Yeah, basically this guy is only implementing whatever is necessary to implement the semantics.
Yeah.
On tower.
That makes sense.
Anything less.
Yeah. Should we take a look at the APIs, or yeah, is it more question? Well, yeah, in your case, that's sad. We'll miss all the awesome parts.
What?
We will miss all the awesome parts then. All right, so I think we now have an overview. So this is the script object.
Yeah. It's the language specific one. So we have just a bunch of static helpers. These are basically all for convenience except for the create one. Right, so
Interesting, I see. Creative T, value, T.
Why would you need to pass in both the globals and the globals type?
Well, it can be different, right? It can be an interface.
Okay.
The global type can be an interface.
So if you had an object and you only wanted to expose part of it to and it will throw if the conversion fails?
Yeah, it's assignable.
Okay, so that won't be part of build, right? It's part of it's just down evaluate, I guess. Yeah.
Not to create a rat hole, but how do you plan on adding new APIs to parameters to these features?
The same way how we add the parameters to the APIs. We copy the signature, remove the optional parameters, and that's kind of backwards compile stuff, and then we add one more with all the optional.
Is that ever written down? Because I think we talked about this many times, and people keep asking me about optional parameters, and I think we should probably just standardize on that and say that's the way you do it.
And we should have an analyzer.
Sure you didn't break compatibility.
Now we already done that for I think one bunch of APIs that we added parameters. So it seems to work. It's the same thing.
Yeah. Any more questions about this script object? Because I don't have any. What is object formatter? That's a generic.
That's good. The other one first.
Which is the other one? Like this one?
Yeah. So let's skip this for now. We can get back.
Okay. So which types do you want to look at next?
We can look at script.
Okay.
Or the exception screen. If there are any diagnostics that are errors, and we'll try to avoid the script.
So that's interesting. So you don't expose the constructor for that guy. We normally don't do that. We normally allow anybody to construct the exception object.
Okay. Can anybody create diagnostics?
Well, that may be a problem.
You could always do your own like compilation on the side.
Yeah.
Say I'm going to speculatively do this thing, and it didn't work. I better search that.
Okay. Yeah, we can do that.
I think now I'm running out of space here.
So that's the script.
So C# script doesn't derive from script?
No, so C# script is just a static class.
Oh, I see.
It's where you start creating. So it's a vector.
Makes sense.
Bother the build isn't called get diagnostics. Seems,
Well, I think we already had a note about calling compile.
Yeah.
but it seems very similar to like on compilation, where you conceptually think of it as already there, and you're just asking a question. The fact that it initializes something in your immutable object is not supposed to be part of the mental model, right?
Yeah. However, when you look at it not from the browser perspective, but from people who do scripting, right? They want the reason why they call build is to get all the expensive stuff done, right? And then just execute the script. Right? I don't think a diagnostics conveys that.
But again, like, how do you guarantee that you've done all the expensive stuff? What is the expensive stuff?
Well, it's the compilation and emit and everything. Like, there is nothing else to. Once the build creates all the delegates, right? Once build is done, all that evaluation does is it won't be done, which is just running the script. There's nothing else to do.
Which is what like compile, because that's the mental problem you would have, right? You just say compile and now you run. I mean,
Right, you don't have to actually call build. You can just create a script with some text, call run, and it'll go through all the steps. It's just if you want to actually stop it before it ran and determine if it had errors.
In fact, that's what happens when you call C script, C# script
Yeah.
does run, right? It doesn't.
Right. And so if there's errors, you'll get the exception. But if you want to get them not as an exception, but you want to try it out first, prove that it's correct, and then call run, that's what it's for.
That all sounds like getting diagnostics.
It's like
The only thing is like there's just a secondary purpose that it warms it up. That it, like,
But the warm up is not secondary purpose. In DS Interactive, we specifically call build on background thread and then run on UI thread, not to block the UI thread.
I see.
yes.
All of those records. So it has two purposes. Right? It has purpose to get diagnostics, and that's basically side effect of building.
Yeah, because in their cases where you can't evaluate on the background thread because you pass in UI objects you want to interact with.
If I call it twice, you like immediately have the diagnostics available and just give them back to me. So like, what if you just had like prepare for run and or compile and void or something, and get diagnostics, and then you like whichever like you have your intent is like whatever you need.
Sure, we can.
You say there are two intents, right? There's
And
get diagnostics, and then there's this perfect thing that's
seems like you would get. You wouldn't really be hard to implement because you have to be able to call it a second time. Anyway.
No, the second one would be this calling the first one and just ignoring the result. I mean, is that?
I don't know. It's an option. Well, if you just that the code then reads like you can tell what people are intending to do. I don't know. It might break the tie, but it's a suggestion. Take it or leave it. I don't have a strong feeling about it.
And so there is one side effect that it partially complies. I wouldn't even commit that it's 100% compliance. What is
no, we want
in the future?
But he's saying that's
we
like
want to commit that it's 100%.
Right. So it feels like you have two different questions.
They compile. Now they don't compile sometimes at all. So,
Well,
so a good idea to call it compile when it actually sometimes no, it doesn't.
Well, I mean,
why would it not? It always emits the stuff.
So it could be.
It creates a delegate, so it should have been called create delegate.
No, create delegate we have as
We
well.
called it compile, but now
We
it
have
doesn't
create
compile.
delegate as well, and that's different.
It still creates a delegate.
so between 25 minutes left, just doesn't write. I mean, I would just put it in the notes and then you can fight it over. I think from my point of view, I completely buy the argument that you want to separate evaluation from compilation for the purposes of offloading the compilation to a worker thread, but you may not be able to offload the evaluation to a worker thread. So whatever naming gets that done with, I think I'm fine with that.
Evaluation it has a bunch of side effects. So
Exactly.
You could be thread bound and all those sort of things.
Yeah.
But build seems like a completely opaque operation, which may actually not even do anything because if you happen to build it before already.
Yep. No, I mean, it's not perfect in that sense, but sometimes good enough is good enough.
Yeah, but it's mostly about the name. So maybe build is okay. People will learn and build.
Does Git compilation also end up causing the same thing when you kick off bugs?
No.
This is slightly.
No,
It's in no
conceptually,
it
yes.
just returns you a compilation. It's an escape to the advanced API.
But if I look at compilation dot
Verify
get
and
diagnostic is the rough.
Yeah.
Get compilation, get diagnostic is rough if we want to build.
Because we don't emit.
Yeah.
The compilation emit result diagnostics.
It does commit and loads the assembly and gets the entry point and makes a delegate.
So there could be still diagnostics after that.
Yes.
Sure.
That would be good.
All right.
It could be called prepare for run, but that's kind of weird.
But people will learn whatever the name you give.
If you have a name for prepare for run, it's called compile.
The thing is, it's an advanced API to begin with.
Yes.
You don't need to call it. You need to only call it if you have performance considerations or special
Right.
things
Yeah.
to make sure that it runs on the right thread and things happen in the right order.
Or if you expect errors.
I'll show the errors.
Build
before
doesn't
that-
sound like an advanced API. It sounds like if I dot into this object and it says build, oh, I guess I better do that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But it seems like not a problem per se, right? I think that's like if I'm constructing a script object and there's a method called build or compile, I'm like, yeah, I guess I know when to call it and how to call it. I mean, it's not like super complicated API.
Now, if you call it, then that's it. It doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt.
I honestly think if somebody calls it prepare for run, I would say like, what are you preparing? Like what do you do? Like if you call it compile, oh yeah, that makes sense. But prepare, like what are you doing?
doing?
All right.
You have to continue with,
Yeah, those ones I think I'm fine with.
What's the difference between continue with code and with code?
with code just creates a different instance of script that is completely independent of that script.
Yeah.
Continue with change.
This is part of the immutable pattern. The with are
So you're,
mutators for different properties.
Why wouldn't you just put that on the C# script then, as opposed to having it here, if you want it, because that would sort of be the factory for creating new scripts.
I think it's to
But you need to have it on the
retain
instance,
type and the
right?
Options. You're retaining all the other properties of the script except the code, which you substitute when you create an instance.
Yeah, this is the setter for the code property.
So
Yeah, I think honestly, I think these APIs are very rarely called, right? Like the most common pattern would be continue with.
I don't know why with code you would do specifically, but it would be
Yeah, what
weird
did you
to
do
have
with
one
with code,
property
though?
not be mutable.
With code is, what would we use it?
It's
I think it's
just
just for
the
completeness,
way
right?
the pattern.
It would be weird
It's
to
the
be missing
immutable
one
setter,
with method.
basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it is. It's the immutable setter.
Yeah, and I guess with previous is called continue with on the previous one, right?
It is a little bit
Yeah, it's
confusing
a
though.
little interesting.
Yeah, these are not continuing.
Yeah, like I don't know.
Do we think there's enough value to have the with at all in these cases?
Probably.
Yeah, they seem odd, I have to admit. I don't know how you would use them.
Every mutable type in the whole namespace works like this, or we're just gonna start.
No, I don't, actually, do they? I don't know.
Yes, they all- yeah, they all
Yeah,
have.
so that seems like we should just keep doing it.
Okay,
For
I
completeness.
didn't actually know that. I didn't, that's the first time I've
It's
actually
kinda
seen
like-
this one.
You've never used Roslyn? Shame on you.
So you put into something and there's only with.
There is a point there. It might be like when you see them next to each other, it's a little less obvious. Like the name continue with like seemed really clear to me, and now like it's like with there's two of them and take a string. Like,
No, this is the object model and that is the execution
yeah,
model.
but maybe that should be.
Well, I guess ideally we would have like get with like we have get set right property access.
Yeah.
We have first property access so that it's just like immutable set. The-
Cancellation token, it's not accessible to the script. It's just for the compilation.
Right.
There's-
You can make it accessible if you expose it as a
Yeah,
whole.
then I need to capture it.
Does the code need to be mutatable? Is that just there for completeness? I mean, I can kind of see why you might want to change the globals type or why you might want to change the options, but
Yeah,
do you ever want to swap out
it's
the
just
code?
I don't know how I would use it. It's just for completeness, I guess. That
So
we make it.
with globals type and
But
with
we don't have
options,
that with
does it?
previous. There's no setter for that one. So it's not complete anyway.
I see.
So maybe we just have with globals type and with options, and then there's no confusion with continuum.
Yeah, like we can take the with code out.
I mean, my question would be with globals, I assume walks the chain, right?
Yeah, we can go with that.
Like if I let's say I build a chain like ABC, right? And they all started from the same globals type. So now on C, I say with globals type, do I get a complete new chain where everything is with this globals type?
I think so.
If it's just the last one, then I'm not sure how that will
I think
blend.
it does unless Tomas changed it.
No.
Because that will be weird, right? If you have like partially the old globals type, like what does it mean if I now pass in the old?
Thinking of it, we should probably remove the global type as well.
All right.
Okay,
Because it's not very clear without.
but options make sense.
Options make.
Yeah, options make sense. But
Because they just affect this one script, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of type the word confusion.
Yeah, the entire chain has to have just one global type. So if you change it, you're basically changing.
Yeah, and then you might like retroactively break all previous submission that depends on.
Well, it creates a new thing, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
So the same probably in scripted T. I don't know if you usually annotate both copies.
yeah, script.
Yeah.
You can always add it.
That's right. So I think probably options will be the next good
Yep.
thing to look at.
Should be the default. I think I just forgot to make it property, the static read only.
Yeah, Tomas is pointing out the field that's listed there should be a property.
I see. God, this is really getting annoying. So, are you concerned that you basically like this one and the compilation option seems very related? Like, is it by
They
design?
are, but and we might want to actually add more options that are currently only on compilation options. For example, what is the overflow checking and other stuff. But not all compilation options make sense for script. Right? Some of them has to be set to specific values, which is done by the script engine. Right? So these are only the options that make sense and that we actually want people to.
So in a sense, you want to, for each option, you want to make a decision whether you want to add it or not. So the only problem in that sense is that you may want to add to script options that you haven't in the past.
Right. So there are only few options that I would consider moving or copying from compilation options. So there is not that many options that make sense.
Okay.
Like there's all sorts of options that are only related to saving stuff to disk and all stuff. And there are extra options here that are not compilation options, which are more runtime specific.
So all
The file-
params and all enumerables will be copied into immutables.
Sorry?
All the params and all the enumerables arguments, you will copy them into immutable right
Yeah.
away.
Yeah, they're just convenience overloads.
And yet there is no overload for immutable,
There is no, because it's not important.
just to make it smaller. It's very unfortunate.
Well,
You have to copy your books and books.
Yeah, we don't care about making a copy. It will happen once. You're on top of it. You create options and then you use them to run scripts.
yeah.
There's more things that will get allocated.
Yeah.
Like 1,000 times more things.
So I'm just
Previously discussed whether the script owner delegate there, which looks like it'd be easy to skip over, you might have.
So which one? Oh, this one.
Just where you are.
One line type
Yeah.
there.
Just so we don't miss that.
Oh, it has cancellation document.
It also has optional arguments, which I don't think you could do if you're using func.
Oh yeah, that's
So that's kind of
That's
nice
the first
to
I've
have.
ever seen a delegate with optional records.
I'm actually surprised it works.
Very nice.
So I have to admit, like, given this mismatch, I would just leave it as it its own delegate type. You guys think? I think converting this to func will be terrible.
No, not func of object cancellation token. Task of D is not a good.
No, it's not. Like,
And
Yeah.
one more time, we're okay with the fact that the globals is an object and so it'll be boxed and all that. We don't want to,
It will always be boxed anyways.
but couldn't you use a type framework?
It will, the storage, actual storage is
By an
an
object,
object.
okay. Is it just the property of the API tool that it says null is the default value of cancellation?
yeah,
it should be
yeah.
default.
yes.
I'm surprised it's even displayed. Is that robust? I don't think I've ever looked through that.
And that thing doesn't have fields anyways. We all know that.
All right.
So there is we can look back at the options. We have metadata solver and sources solver,
Yeah.
and the corresponding readers. And so these are the types that we pass in. And so there is always a default one. So you can do create metadata solvers, create metadata solvers on default, which is the default, so you don't need to do that. But if you want to customize, pass, search paths or anything, you create your own.
What's I credible for?
What is what?
Why does it need to be I incredible?
Equitable? Because because when we compare options in general, the IDE wants to optimize if nothing changed. It doesn't want to recreate projects and all that. So this is like the resolvers are derived from Rasen base types, which are used everywhere. So and those are coded.
Okay, and we don't expect them to have identity, so
It's not.
Okay.
So basically, the resolver should behave the same if it has the same search paths and same base directory, right? So it makes actual sense to be whatever.
Makes sense.
But you don't introduce operators. But people have
Yeah.
Yeah, this one you should probably add. Otherwise, people will make very simple mistakes potentially. I hate this. This should really automatically pop up. Who wrote this shit? Here
once
we
you
go.
do equals, there's like 10 different things to come up right away.
Should have double equals.
Do we have equals on compilation?
No, we almost never implement.
Yeah, we never do
You don't have to do that.
Except for the symbol.
that. And that is basically.
You don't think we should do that?
Symbol because it's interface. Internally, it's not, but externally, it's just interface.
It's actually, with reference types, the guidelines are actually wishy-washy on whether you have to once equals or not.
So you're the
So no,
human
like-
FX co-op. Tell me.
No,
like,
I'm serious.
You know, I
It
mean-
is serious. Like because it's like some, I forget the exact phrasing, but like, string is like clearly a good thing because like strings are really just like, we're trying to hide the fact that they're not values. But like with other things, like reference equality may be meaningful to you. It's that kind of a wishy-washy statement, but when you override equals, it's hard.
I would say if you implement IEquatable, you kind of say you want to treat it as a value,
I
right?
usually often on my own designs, if there's any question about which one, then like it should be like a compare on the side. It's like, can say what it does, what it compares. But
I keep forgetting if system type implements equals or not. So, but
Oh, system type is terrible because it has equals or something different from double equals. Like that's just evil. You're asking for trouble.
But I'm using the single level open with the red thing. I mean, if it has different semantics, it should have overridden equal.
it's probably the
Yeah.
worst example. 99% of the time,
Yeah.
it's equals is overloaded on some platforms and not on others. So it's really weird. For type, but
I don't
know.
All right.
particularly care, but we don't do that usually.
Right. I mean, is the IEquatable something like a very specific scenario that you can just have a option, like some sort of comparer that you instantiate that doesn't have to actually be, when you say x dot equals y, like Is that a common thing, like, or is it more like there's a scenario for making sure that it hasn't
The scenario section. I'm just picking it in the scenario section. It's the valid for this.
Because in
The base class components I included.
in the documentation,
Oh,
you'll say like,
okay.
and if you want to compare this, please make sure you call dot equals on this. It's
I see. Yeah, I can see that.
Right.
Well, let's stay with this for now, and let me just weaken this a bit.
Yeah, I think this is.
Yeah, because it depends, right? I mean, if you don't do it in the rest of worlds, then it may be a very weird pattern to have.
But I would,
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, equitable to me says that, it makes sense to compare those two. The behavior of one is the same, but I don't use.
Suitable is just if you put this in hash table, it's going to be the behavior.
No, I know,
That's pretty
but-
much just for that.
But it's not like it's intent, right? So it's capturing intent that.
Yeah.
It makes sense to compare these for equal. And whether or not I want people to do that often so that I provide consequence operator, I don't think I want.
Right. Let's try to keep going. So script get, I think, is another one that we should look at. There's not much to do. You have a generic overload. Script object, the variables.
One of the places you get a script state you call run async, right? Right. So these continue with async in the right one for continuing here? Just wondering whether or not it should be a run.
That's the same chaining, right? So we have continue with which change the scripts, and this is on the state level. You can continue with async, change the states essentially.
But you're saying we should put evaluate here as well? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm just trying to figure out what this visualize look like. You could call run async and then you wait on it, and then you call continuous and then
Yeah.
wait on that.
Yeah. Well, I think it's basically
That was the sample.
What does get variable do?
the difference between these
That was the
two.
example.
A script variable is mutable.
Hmm?
And the value is mutable.
Yeah, the script variable itself is mutable. Actually, the script variable itself is not mutable, but it has a
Yeah,
mutator
I
of the actual variable.
The value is mutable. That's surprising.
The
So all
script
the-
variable is just description.
All the global variables that your scripts define
Yeah.
are accessible after you run it as part of the script state. And you can look at it through the variables, or you can actually change it.
So variables is cumulative?
Uh,
Across all previous
yes,
scripts?
yes,
Yeah.
it's good.
What does get variable do if there's more than one?
It gives you the last one, the one that actually at this point is
Most
visible.
recent one.
All the hidden ones are. Hidden. It's just
Does that
influence the
mean
language.
the name somehow get last variable? Get variable?
I don't know.
I don't know. Like just looking at the API, it's not clear to me what it does if there's two.
It's probably a
Oh, you
comment.
read the document. Know what the corner case is.
Let me just edit note on that one because that seems fair. Okay.
Yeah, it's
I know.
Time-based word because it's supposed to be.
Seems like it's a little bit excessive to go and be so specific when you don't really have another member you're trying to contrast against.
Yes.
specific.
I guess
Like,
because it feels
the
like
variable
singular
is
default,
not-
or I would bring it with throw if there were two. Okay,
Sure.
my intuition would never be it gets the first one.
Right, but
That'd be
then
weird,
isn't
the
your
middle one.
intuition to say, oh, and look at the dot comment and see what the behavior is?
Sure.
Because it's really a corner case. You know, if you hiding is not something that you would do.
And so the reason to do that rather than to get the list of variables is to save yourself the traversal on the object.
Yes, it's just convenience, and it also implements the language semantics because this string is case insensitive indeed, right? So if the hiding is kind of different, right? Because you need to
Yeah.
like capital X hides lowercase
Yeah.
x in VB, it doesn't in C#. So that's accounted for here.
I assume you throw when the name doesn't exist at all,
Uh,
or do you return now?
the comment will be
What about lookup variable?
That's not bad.
That's reasonable. Yeah,
I like that one.
that's reasonable.
Because then it's like you typed it, what did it bind to?
Yeah.
Does anyone want to define get first default or get first?
Get last. Essentially.
Reverse. All the variables.
First where, first default.
It should be
Is the
It's
variables,
not that bad.
the variables are most recent as well, right? Are they,
Now the variables are just a
Declaration
list of
order.
all of them.
that is a little bit.
Well, the interesting
get
question
variable
is,
with the binder.
if get variable doesn't
No, it's
grow,
saying like, should they be
and
most recent?
it should be
They would still
try
always
get
throw this
variable?
in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's a
why-
discussion where Christoph feels very strongly it shouldn't.
It shouldn't?
Like if you use try, it should follow the try pattern with an out parameter and returning bool, which makes this API really ugly, right?
So
The corollary of that is if you really probably should throw if the name doesn't exist.
yeah, but then you don't have one program version.
Exactly. So like that's I'm not particularly a fan of that, but because I mean I think fundamentally that's one of the things where the framework doesn't have a super awesome crispy
I
cut.
think we just return now.
Yeah, just return now, that's cheapest. Well, no.
I think that's fine, because if you try to do something with it, then you get no reference exception right now.
Oh, you'll use always.
Yeah, like that's why I would argue for throwing, because then you at least get an actionable error. You know, like what the heck just happened?
What happens if you use a variable name and within the script code itself that's not declared anywhere? Does it give you a null value back?
Yeah, that's what we're discussing right now.
Yeah.
No, I'm not talking about if in the script itself, not in this list here. Like if you say X times Y equals this and you haven't declared X, does
Oh, yeah, it's compilation error.
Yeah.
Yeah, then you get diagnosed.
It's still an error, then kind of in this, I would kind of expect it to be
Oh, throw an exception.
similar.
Yeah.
I guess.
So if it's lookup, that would be saying for it to throw in a compilation exceptions right there, return to diagnostics for like why X didn't work. I guess the exception would always be it's not fine, but
Right, yeah, I would just throw some specific exception.
I would top over the argument exception and saying name doesn't exist. Alright. Because it's a contract violation if you pass in a name that doesn't exist.
I'll prefer now, because I can check for now and throw. But if it throws, then
Well, I would argue like that's not how you would write the code. I would argue that you would probably get the name from some other mechanism, and that name is incorrect. Something in your program is busted. Like there's nothing to react to. Like you have to fix your program at that point.
Well, maybe, but these are meant for exploratory, the host to explore what was run. And you might not always be in the situation where you know what's being run. It's supplied by the user. And there may be some loose contract that the user is going to supply some definitions and you're looking for them.
I suppose, but then probably I would design the API in such a way to express that. Because I mean, otherwise, my concern would be you just like worst case you get a crash dump, you get an ref, and then it's like great, which name did you even look for? Because you just get an ref. Like you have no contextual information at that point, right? Like I think if you would like to have that contract and you care about perf, then I would literally just do the try get variable pattern or try look up
Maybe we should.
and go with that.
Maybe we should try look up there.
The only problem with that is it makes the API. I mean,
But the
Christoph
API is
going
not.
after you if you gotta try.
oh, you said
I
that.
don't think the API is like so commonly used that it would be a problem to run it right. Like it's not like, get script or whatever, create
Yeah.
script.
Scripting puts me in the mind of more like JavaScript. You're just going to dot on something and it doesn't exist. It's just going to be null. And it's like, that's just,
That's what the
Atlanta
script
record.
code, not what the
That's
code
the
does.
state of the art there.
Yeah. Although V8 itself doesn't do that, right? That's the I think the argument. Yeah, I probably need to go at some point. All right. So I think is there any more we need?
script elements need to expose whether or not they're read-only.
Sorry.
Script variables can be read-only, right?
They could, if they expose the field, field info, I think, or no? Don't they?
Name type.
No, they don't. Oh, okay. So, interesting.
Should they be exposing that?
That's a little bit implementation leaking through.
But should they have like modifiers or some, like there's no metadata there at all,
There
right?
could be a public bool is read only.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Value setter actually grows. If it's,
So it would be nice to
it would be
not.
nice. That's
Yeah.
it would be nice. Where
I'm not sure why they should be very usable. I guess the result very computation. Why would you want to change?
Because you're the host and you want to change something before you
so what?
set some state before
What
you run the
actually
next
people do, they have a script, they run it, and then they have the kind of visual programming. Right? They drag some variables value, right, and change it, right, and then they keep running the script. They can do that.
Does that get persisted if you like emit out the script file to this?
No, you're actually changing the
Runtime
memory
value.
state.
Okay, that's what I was.
You're not changing the script itself.
So, but the,
Oh, so you can continue and use the modified variable.
Yeah.
Or even just rerun it. You can create a delegate that you have and then rerun it actually.
I thought it's just a dump.
No. It's very major.
I just have too many items. Don't you use a mutable array for that?
Which one?
R uses command line script global.
Oh yeah, that's it's a mutable.
It's mutable?
Yeah, exactly.
I see.
Anyway.
I think in the future you should make script variable of t and have a ref returning property in it. The value. Then you can call set effecting methods.
You say do ref restore?
All right.
It'd be super helpful if that line numbers. Well, people keep asking me what I
5 years ago.
I think I
And
was
so,
saying.
so now we are in the hosting namespace, which is the super complex stuff.
We need to help Jan or somebody with ability.
Just say that because it makes me sound very smart. I don't have a concrete like proposal for you, but every time I see something that loads assemblies and there's some policy like shadow copying, like I think
Yeah,
we will regret that at some point.
And so the globus, that's a specific globus object. That's the PU saw in the samples for hosts to use when they are running scripts from command line, like CSI. Right? If somebody wants to write another host, well, first of all the globus objects have to be public so that you can actually access that. So this is actually the object that we use when you're running from command line. And if somebody wants to add more stuff, they can either inherit or delegate whatever they want. Right? And the contract is kind of, we want them to have these properties, because if you write scripts, they expect these properties to exist. So if you write another host that should run all those scripts, right, you should expose those properties that the scripts expect.
What's the name under which they expose inside the script?
Well, it's the class name is not exposed. The constructor is not exposed.
No, I mean like in the script I get literally a global variable called args and reference paths, and so I see. I see.
So you only get the CD members.
And that's the globus object that I pass in. So here is that I inherit from this guy and supposed to creating my own type on the. I see. That's what you meant. I get it.
And so now we see the object formatter that we skipped before.
Mm-hmm.
So as a host, object formatter is language specific. So if you're hosting C#, you pass in the C# instance, and it's used in the print method to print out objects in kind of way how.
So print is your language agnostic console write line essentially?
Well, it's language specific actually. Right?
Oh, that's what I meant. Yeah.
Like constants are printed as if you were in the language.
I see.
And it's deep print is more like watch window or immediate window. You get properties and stuff like that.
And then print is also a globally visible function within the script. True for any function I add there myself.
Yes, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Cool.
Right, and the interactive script globals, that's basically a similar thing for records. So there is print, there is args, the same thing. There's also reference paths and source paths which you can set. Right? And the reason why they are not on the first one is that if you're running one of the script, right, all the paths were already resolved.
Yes.
Right, so you don't have a chance to change it from within the script. But if you're running REPL, it's for the next submission. You can influence the resolution.
Makes sense.
Is print the right word here?
How would you call it?
Display.
Why not?
Does it write on the console?
It writes to the output.
Whatever you passed in there.
Print is what everybody else uses. Like Python.
That's more like a script thing.
I think the only question would be, do you have a line ending? Because then probably should be print line.
It actually
But it's several lines.
prints a structured object, right?
Yeah.
It
It's
just
not that, you don't get to control it that much.
I see.
There's a format over there.
Yeah, there is a format which controls it. And in future, we are thinking of adding more properties that you can tweak so that your print looks as you want.
Pretty print.
Well, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't call it print because it's too long.
Yeah, personally, I'm fine with print.
And C has even C++. We should not call it printf though.
Anything
Yeah,
else?
My only question was, it's not clear to where it's going to. That's what, but I don't think any of it necessarily.
Well, I think it's not clear by construction, right? Like, I mean, I think the argument is that you're inside some interactive window, whatever that window decided to write to. That's your contract that you have in the script.
You can do an echo.
You could send you an email.
Yeah.
Sure.
You can even go to printer.
Yeah, I could do that. All right. If there's nothing more I need to run, then we'll just stop the recording.
Shadow copying and shadow copying don't appear to be related types, like in a class hierarchy. So there's a metadata shadow copying, and then its first property is a type of shadow copying.
Yeah.
Metadata shadow copy is not a subtype of shadow copying.
No, shadow copy